You're listening to the Wrestling Changed My Life podcast. Quick update, folks. The Smiths, a 7-part audio documentary on both John and Pat Smith, drops this Monday, February 1st. You can listen to all 7 episodes right here on the Wrestling Changed My Life podcast. Don't miss it. Now let's get to this episode with Pat Popolizio.
We can endure anything and adapt and pivot and change. Wrestling gave us that ability.
I would say nothing in life has impacted me more than the things wrestling has taught me in terms of self-reflection, resilience.
Toughness. Some guys have it, some guys don't.
Adversity, 100%. How to pick myself up and be a man after I failed.
And everything that has shaped my life and where I'm at today would not be there without the values and basically the lessons I've learned through the sport of wrestling.
For me, wrestling saved my life because it allowed me to focus and channel my energy.
We're fortunate if you wrestled, because if you wrestled, natural talent helps, but it's 5% of the ingredient. It pales in comparison to heart and technique and effort.
It humbled me, taught me humility. Nothing can humble you more than wrestling. I think it's the learning to adapt, right? You learn how to adapt, you learn how to solve problems.
You know, if I look back at my time I spent wrestling, if it gave me one thing more than anything else, it's mental toughness.
Welcome back to the Wrestling Changed My Life podcast. Thanks for tuning in, folks. Before we get to the episode, I must apologize that we're releasing our second episode of the week on a Friday. That's a sin in my household. But we've been working hard on the Smith documentary, and it comes out on Monday, so I hope you can forgive me. My guest today is Pat Popolizio, head coach at North Carolina State. Before that, he was at Binghamton. This guy is a program builder, one of the best coaches in the country. I hope you pick up a nugget or two from the great Coach Pop. Fan of the week goes to my man Maniac Michael. That's Maniac_Michael on the gram. Appreciate you tuning in, my brother. And folks, if you want to support this podcast, please support our sponsors. This week it's Spartan Combat. They're hosting a national tournament in Jacksonville, Florida, May 21st through the 23rd. Freestyle, Folkstyle, Greco, beach wrestling, dual team tournament. They got it all. And by registering on SpartanCombat.com, you get a free race pass as well. SpartanCombat.com. Check it out, folks. And let's give it up for the great Pat Popolizio. Peace! Coach Popolizio, welcome to the Wrestling Changed My Life podcast, sir.
Great to be with you.
I'm excited. Yeah, I'm excited to have you on. I didn't know that you were an Oklahoma State guy until I started my research on this.
Well, yeah, that's where the roots started. Well, high school, but college-wise.
Yeah.
A lot of good history and tradition there. So,
man, a lot to cover. Let's start, though, I want to start with your parents. True, your dad was an immigrant, Italian immigrant?
Excuse me. Yeah, that is correct. Came over, actually, the last year Ellis Island was open. Him and his whole family, they came over, actually took the boat over here. And instead of going to the Statue of Liberty, he went to go get his lollipop. So, true story. Him and his brothers all went to go get the candy instead of going right to the statue.
So, what kind of influence did that have growing up in you? I mean, I know you had an older brother, Frank, who was probably super influential in your life. But, talk about just what it was like growing up with parents who literally could say they came over, on the boat, so to speak.
Yeah, I think there, people, when you look back, I think there was a lot of pride in anything that you did. You're very thankful for them and the situations that they put you in. I think it goes back to the roots of work ethic and, everything that they did, they had to start from scratch. Coming over here when you don't know anybody or anything, literally started from the ground up. And I think it created a good work ethic for everyone in our household and connected to our family, not just like our immediate family, but just, cousins, aunts, uncles, all that. There was a lot of pride in that and, making a name for yourself when you're when you're starting from scratch from a new country. Learning English, you know, they didn't even speak any English when they came over here and had to learn all that. So it was probably not an easy transition for them, and to navigate through, you know, being in the States. I thought they did a really good job getting their feet on the ground and building a really good foundation and making life, you know, easier for their kids, which we benefited from as, you know, brothers and cousins and whatnot.
Yeah, I mean, I know people call you a program builder, but think about your folks, you know, building a life, you know, from nothing almost. It's like,
yeah,
when you went, you know what I mean?
And those are the things, you know, you never take anything for granted. You always are very appreciative when people are willing to help, or you see someone create success. You know, it's not an easy thing to do. And I think that's probably one of the hardest things when you look back, is someone packing up their family, moving to a whole new country. There's a lot of unknown and, you know, fear when it comes to that. And then just to be brave and get to work, you know, starting, no matter what they did, you know, it wasn't like you could come here and get one of these mainstream jobs right away. Everything they did, they had to work from the bottom up, and all been really successful because of it.
Yeah, I mean, just being around that is, you know, a lot of, I mean, looking back now, it sounds glamorous, but probably a lot of struggle, a lot of tough moments. And so that's kind of the environment you were brought up in. And as we alluded to, your brother Frank runs the Journeyman Club.
He's a farmer too. Don't forget that.
What's that?
I said he's a farmer too. Don't forget that.
Yeah, it sounds like he's got a bunch of property, huh? I've read an article where he was in the Hall of Fame, and it's like, yeah, I got chickens, I got livestock, and
I just saw something on Facebook. He posted he had a rooster eating. I don't know what he's got going on, but every day is something new.
How far apart were you guys growing up?
We're 6 years. And then I got a middle brother that we were 18 months apart. We actually wrestled at UNC.
Okay.
So, yeah, got a lot of family members that wrestle.
So was it when you were growing up, I mean, your older brother got into it, and he, you know, he's just obsessed with wrestling. Was it just a wrestling household for you guys?
So we actually had a cousin, Severino, who started it. He was a runner-up New York State, actually went to Boston University and wrestled. He's in their Hall of Fame over there. So he kind of got the ball rolling, and then all our cousins alongside both my brothers wrestled. So we had a huge tradition of family members that all had wrestled. But it really started with my oldest brother, Frank, was on our high school team. He started up this little peewee program. We actually had a mat in our basement, and it was my brother, Anthony, my cousin Vinny, my cousin Mike, and then my high school coach's son, Mike Benna. We would come over and actually started right in our basement. We had a little mat where we could fit 4 or 5 little guys on a little square, and we would literally practice 4 days a week, 5 days a week in our basement.
That's awesome. What was your cousin's name, the one who started?
Severino.
So Severino Popolizio?
Yeah, big old afro. Yep, big old afro. And we went out, you know, Boston had a program, and I was at Binghamton. We would go there. Obviously, they were in a conference, and every time I'd walk into their athletic facility, they had their Hall of Fame pictures, and he would, you know, be in a stance with his big old afro hanging out. But yeah, that's where it all started. He had a pretty good, successful college career there. I think he had the highest win percentage in program history over there.
Wow, that's it's just cool to see that people, you know, like you. I mean, you had those mentors to look up to, but people who go through it for the first time like that, you got to tip your hat to them.
When you have that, it definitely,
yeah,
you know, you can talk and relate to situations that when there's a lot of, I mean, let's face it, college wrestling, you got to overcome a lot of adversity. So it's nice to have those people to talk to.
That might be the most Italian name I've ever heard too. So and after high school, you had a great high school career. You went to Oklahoma State, but one of the reasons your brother started the Journeyman, I don't know, is it the Journeyman Club, or what do you guys call it?
Journeyman Wrestling Club.
Journeyman Wrestling Club. Was
that a lot of different things, but that's.
Well, you had a
tournament,
pretty vicious recruiting, not vicious, but just draining recruiting process. And that's one of the reasons he started it. So kind of walk us through what it was like being recruited in the mid 90s with no flow and what that experience.
Yeah, it was different. I actually, you know, made that decision. I wanted to wrestle in college, and parents made this really, I think I still have it. It's embarrassing highlight tape with Rocky music in the background, typical immigrant highlight film. But sent it out to a bunch of colleges. And, back then, again, there wasn't emails. It was all letter writing. So we wrote up a letter, sent it out to maybe 10 or 15 schools, and heard back from a few of them. And obviously Oklahoma State was one that I got in contact with. It was actually Mark Perry was doing the recruiting over there, and then was able to take a visit. So, yeah, started through old mail, writing old letters, typewriter and all.
That's it's ironic it was Mark Perry, because I know when he left, Mark Cody came in, and that was one of your longtime mentors.
Yeah.
And so when you got to campus, and for folks who don't know, you were at Okie State for 6 years, 5 or 6
Correct.
years.
Yep, 6 years. Got a medical hardship.
Got it. But your freshman year, though, is one of the most historic NCAA championships ever, 1997. Crazy. At the Unidome, you get pulled out of redshirt late in the year, qualify for the big dance. And going into that, Oklahoma State had beaten Iowa at the national duels. Everyone thought Oklahoma State was going to win. What do you remember from that 97 tourney?
Yeah, that was, it happened fast. Again, I didn't know anything about college wrestling. I had no clue. I probably didn't even watch a college match until I actually went to Oklahoma State and was wrestling in it. But I started off probably 4th or 5th string. I don't know. They were so deep in that room. And I remember, whatever ranking matches we had, got beat by a lot of guys there. And our starter went down. Aaron Strobel was the starter, but literally a month left in the season, he dislocated his elbow in practice. And I remember seeing that and being like, oh boy, that's not a good sign. And then obviously the next week we had wrestle-offs, and I was able to, a couple of those guys that beat me in the beginning of the year, flip the results on that, and got thrown out there in some pretty good duels right away. I think it was actually Arizona State was my first match against a returning All-American. Ended up winning that match and was like, all right, can do something here. And it was definitely an eye-opener. It was the old school weigh-ins too, back in the day when it was night before.
Okay.
So had a couple duels under my belt. And then, I think looking at it, I think everyone thought Oklahoma State was favored to win that year. And then Iowa goes in and has that historic run where they put 5 guys in the finals, a couple unknown, guys winning nationals that weren't probably supposed to do it, and just had a really dominant tournament. And they, I think you look at the firepower Oklahoma State had that year, they were very capable of winning it. I just think things slipped away a little bit.
Yeah, Iowa had a 120 or a 118. Whitmer, yeah, he went on a run, and it's just one of those situations where both teams could have won. But it's just cool that was your entrance to the Division I Nationals, was that tournament. And over your 6 years at Oklahoma State, you saw UFC champions come through there, Olympians come through there. Who, just out of curiosity, who was your roommate? Was it?
I lived with Munoz my freshman year. We were roommates, West Coast to East Coast. Dude, great guy, awesome. We were around the same size too, so we'd work out quite a bit. And he was so good and fast, and for a big guy, it was a perfect roommate for me to have. Learned a lot from him.
He's been on the show, and I love that guy. He talks. Everyone's heard the story. He goes away 1 year, comes back 20 pounds heavier. Is that true?
That was 100% planned. Our first year there, they got him down to 167, and he was skin and bones. And he comes, I'm sure he's told you too, his parents are from Philippines, and he can eat. His mom is an awesome cook. And he can eat. So the fact that they cut him down to 67, and then he wrestled at 84. I was up. We made the decision at some point that we were both like, all right, obviously I'm undersized for this weight. And he's like, I would love to eat more and go up. And style-wise, it worked out really good for him, being up a weight class and then me cutting down to when the weight switched to 184. It was perfect weight for college. But, yeah, Munoz, he did it. He was like, they wanted him at 84, and they wanted me to stay up. And I was like, I want to go down. And Mark's like, yeah, I'm going to make sure I go up. And he came back and he literally put on 20 pounds. Like nothing. It was just a couple meals for him. And he was, whatever he got up to, like 225.
Yeah. He said that, back in those days, especially then, Oklahoma State had guys cutting pretty hard. And I asked Mark Perry about this. He's like, we weren't doing nothing anyone else was, but everyone insists that it was vicious cutting in the room at that time.
Yeah, the guys did a really good job getting down and trimming down to the right weights.
Yeah.
So, there were some guys that really you'd see them in the off season and you wouldn't recognize them during the season.
And as we mentioned, one of your coaches there was Mark Cody. What about that relationship kind of stuck in, and how did that impact the rest of your coaching career?
Yeah, it was probably a good time for him to come in. Dealt with a lot of injuries in my time at Oklahoma State, so it wasn't a smooth college career. There were definitely times we would question, is it healthy to keep wrestling? And then when he came in, it was just a boost of confidence, having a guy from the outside bring in maybe a little different perspective on the sport. And at that time, I think it was healthy. Anytime you learn from coaches in the past and you bring some new coaches in, you get a different perspective. I mean, we do it here right now. Anytime a coach leaves and someone new comes in, the guys really enjoy seeing a different perspective. It's never going to be the same when someone leaves, but yeah, there's always positives to someone new coming in. And that's something Cody did a really good job, is just, I think, instilling a lot of confidence. And it was probably something I really needed at the time. You go through some of those college seasons, you get a little beat up, you get down on yourself. And I think that was one thing he was able to help me just kind of refocus, kind of hit the reset button and see things from a different light. But yeah, he was definitely helped. It was actually my last 2 years that he was there. And then his style mirrored a lot of some of the things that I was intrigued by. Just the discipline that he had as a coach, that he expected out of guys, his, work ethic. There was a lot of really good positive things on the mental side of stuff. Obviously, the technical side of things I was already in one of the best places in the world for me to learn technique. And I just love that mental side of things that maybe I was missing from years past.
So when you say mental side of things, what do you mean by that?
I think, when you look at college wrestling, I think you got guys who are naturally just really good and mentally are, confident in themselves. And we deal with it here. You got guys who don't need a whole lot. They're just need to be taught a few things, work on a few positions. And then you got the guys you got to mentally bring along, boost their confidence up a little bit, make sure that they're focused. Everyone's managed in a different way. And I think that's one thing that Cody did a really good job of doing, is getting guys to believe in themselves. Sometimes coaching is that art, and I think when you look at some of the stuff Gable was able to do in the sport of wrestling, I think he was probably one of the masters at it, is the mental side of really getting guys to believe and buy into everything that they were about. And kind of that's the mental stuff that I personally love about wrestling. I think that's the fun part of the sport.
It's such it's almost like voodoo, right? You can't see it. You can't put your hands on it and grab like this confidence hat and put it on someone. Yeah. And sometimes you don't even know about it until afterwards, because a guy might be saying all the right things but deep down they're lying to themselves. So is that something you dealt with as an athlete yourself?
Yeah. It's that question, what are your goals? I want to win a national championship. Like, we all say it, but do you truly believe that? And that's that blind faith that you got to have. You got to believe in yourself first before it can actually happen. So some people need a little more help getting there. And when you find those kids and they have all the tools, but now there's that mental side. I think that's something here at NC State we pride ourselves on, is getting guys to really believe in themselves. And a lot of that goes to your daily habits, what you do outside the room, and how do you instill those confidence. And it goes back to some training and some things that we do. But I love that. To me, that's the side of wrestling that I love. I love watching a guy break through. Don't get me wrong. There's always those guys that you get that naturally have that. And then it's okay. Let's just focus on the technical side of things and manage these guys with, weight training and their weight and things like that. But then there are the ones that you really need to get them to believe in themselves. And when they do, they're dangerous.
Dangerous. And it's, you look at some of the guys on your roster. Yeah, I can imagine that the headlights come in just absolute firing. Yeah, you don't got to worry about those guys. And you guys, you mentioned you enjoy converting kids who maybe aren't there to that level. And you look at how many NCAA qualifiers you guys have had over the past 5 years. I think it was like 47 of 50 have qualified for the Nationals, which is astounding. But before we get to NC State, I got to talk about Binghamton. Is it Binghamton or Binghamton?
Binghamton.
Binghamton.
Yep.
I mean, you get there the year before they were like 0-12, and the program had just been reinstated. What was the state of things when you got in there?
It was challenging. The only positive to me was no one had been there that long, so there was no culture yet, and that was, to me, actually I'd rather had it that way, so we could come in and make our culture. Where a lot of times, like here at NC State, they came in, there was already a culture, so you had to shock it. There, we were able to just establish it. We had a couple guys that were already there. Josh Patterson was coming in. He was one of the top recruits in the country. So we had a little bit of that talent there. There was like 1 or 2 guys we could focus on, but the rest of the guys, we're a little under the, I guess, talent level for D1. So we had to go out and we had to go recruit. And to me, I was like, I'm going to look in a radius of whatever, 2 or 3 hours, and I'm going to find the toughest kids that we can get. Maybe not the most talented, but I'm going to try and get these guys right off the farm somewhere. And we were able to do that. We got about 5 or 6 core guys that were just tough kids that could train at a very hard pace and they got really good shape, and they were just tough kids. So we established a really good foundation with our culture, and then we were able to start building some momentum off that.
And so is that good advice, do you think, for someone who's maybe coaching one of those, quote unquote mid-major programs where you just focus on that 3 to 4 hour radius and really hammer it out there? Is that advice you'd give to a coach listening?
Yeah, I knew Binghamton was more of a school where kids probably weren't going to go across the country to come to Binghamton University. I mean, now I think it's different. You can do that. But when we were starting up, I knew, if I was trying to get a kid from California, half the times I'd call a kid and they'd say, Coach, I want to wrestle D1. I'm like, all right, well, we're not probably going to end up getting this kid. So, I found those guys that wanted to stay close to home and that were just pretty solid. I was actually looking for the guys that were second and third. Obviously, you want to get the guys who win, but I was like, if I can fill this room up with a lot of place finishers in the state and guys that will train really hard, we could build on this and get some momentum going. And we did. You look at guys that actually placed for me. There was Justin Lister, Donnie Vincent, who's coaching here. Those guys never won a state title. So I wanted that little bit of still got something they need to prove. And then you had guys that did win, like Patterson and Gwiz. But that was Gwiz was a little further down the road. Last year they were recruiting, and that was, from guys having some success now that it was recruiting opened up a little bit more. But yeah, it was a perfect storm for me because I grew up 2 hours from there, and I was able to recruit New York pretty good.
I was going to say, with your brother running things and having his fingers, all within that state, I'm sure that helped. Did you have a sense of what your core philosophy would be at that point in time, or has it evolved since then?
It's evolved a lot. I think, being here is different than there and knowing that, but I really just wanted to find guys that made wrestling a lifestyle, like everything worked backwards from wrestling, and kids that grew up similar background that just every weekend, that's all they were in the gym. They were, if you took wrestling away from them, they were basically lost. And that's kind of what I was looking for when we were recruiting there, is like, this wrestling means everything to this kid. And now can we instill the discipline that we're looking for outside the room? Finding guys that were committed to doing the right things on the weekends, not going out, not looking to over socialize. And that was an easy place to manage that. It was a small little town, and I could put my finger on guys and point to where they were going to be on a Friday and Saturday night. So
yeah,
I think it's easy to. We were just talking about it with Donnie. I was like, there was one strip of places for kids to go, and you sure could find me there on a Friday, Saturday night, looking to see if guys were actually out and about.
Just patrolling, huh?
Patrolling. Had to.
I love it. And I just love stories where someone comes from a program that, is on the brink of, coming back into existence. One of my heroes was Mark Johnson. When he took over Illinois, they were terrible. And, he built Illinois into a perennial power, and much the same you're doing at NC State. If you had to give advice to people who are trying to build programs, like what are some of your core 2 to 3 tenets of, building support outside of the room? Because I feel like that is its own skill. Like outside of the room, how are you doing that so effectively?
You're talking fan base,
relations with the AD. I mean, you look at your coaching staff, you have a huge staff, you have all this digital media presence. Like, I don't know if you're doing that yourself or if they're helping you.
I mean, we got a great thing with help here now. But yeah, at Binghamton, different programs have different resources. And I'm not saying everything's perfect here. And when it's not, we got to take it into our control and do things that are obviously in line with the department and compliance. But I do think, building that relationship with your AD is critical. And knowing what they're looking for, I think that's a big thing. And your guys got to be role models. So it's hard. It's easy to fall in love with a team that's, getting good grades, that are doing the right things off the mat. And it's easy to really resent the team if your guys are getting in trouble and they're not winning. I can see where an administrator would be like, we gotta fix some things with the program if that's happening. So we talk about that a lot. How do we gain respect within the department, which will carry over to the community? Our guys are the leading force of that. Yes, as coaches, we can preach all we want, but our guys have to buy in, and they've got to be that role model citizen. And we're fortunate enough, we had it at Binghamton with the guys that we brought in. They were that to a T. And I think that goes back to recruiting, not taking too many risks or chances. Yes, you can do it once you establish a culture, but if you don't have the culture and you're, flooding it with just talent, I think it could be a dangerous combination. So you got to have that fine balance of the right kid's character, and then you can maybe take a little bit of a chance where you can cultivate a kid that might be on the cusp of going left or right.
Got it. No, it's an interesting thing because sometimes I've had coaches tell me that they want to get this recruit because it'll push them up in the national rankings and it looks better to land this guy, but deep down, they know that it could be problematic, and that's a negotiation you have to have with yourself as a coach. Yeah,
we try not to ever get caught up in the rankings, because I can tell you right now, I'm watching guys in our room. You'll have this kid that's one of the top recruits in the country, and then you get a guy like Isaac Trumbull, who's a true freshman, just knocks off on the top guys in the country. He wasn't the top ranked guy coming out, but I can promise you right now, when it's all said and done, he's going to be like a Machiavello he left being one of the top ranked guys in the country.
Yeah, what a huge win on, was it Friday against Pitt?
Yeah, Friday. He had a good win against a really good kid that wrestles really hard. So it was good for him. But yeah, and it goes back to the mental side of stuff we're talking about. You got to believe in yourself, and that's a kid that he's got a lot of confidence in himself, but it goes back to his work ethic, attitude, and everything that he's doing outside the room is giving him those confidence boosters that he needs.
And I listened to one of the duels you had where you were mic'd up, and a couple words it was all PG. It was good.
Yeah.
A couple of common denominators were the word relax and the word attitude.
Yeah.
So when you say attitude, does it mean optimistic? Does it mean, I guess, what does attitude mean to you if you think about it on a daily basis?
Determination. Like when I'm watching our practice, if he's starting practice working at a 9 or a 10, he needs to be finishing practice working at a 9 or a 10. You can't start practice at a 4 or 5 and think halfway through, now I'll pick it up just a little bit because we're close to the end.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something I'm looking for when we start wrestling 7 minutes. I need the intensity. You watch Hayden wrestle. He starts from the time the whistle blows till it ends wrestling the same pace. There's no, let me get through, make sure my legs are underneath me, and then the last minute, I'm going to try and steal this match. That's something that we're trying to work, and that goes back to your attitude, which all carries back to the way you're training, the way your diet is, the way your sleep pattern is, the work ethic outside the room and in the room. And those elite guys, they have that attitude. Everything that they're doing is to better their, them as a person, school, and wrestling.
So it's a big part of it's effort for you. Where's the effort at consistently?
Yes, constant. Like, not just when we're here as coaches and Frank. I know our elite guys, you never have to pull them into the room to do more work. If anything, you're kicking them out.
Yep. Yeah, that's a common theme. Guys are saying, "Hey, you're working too much. Take a break." That's obviously what you need out of a team. Now, when you look at the state of North Carolina, traditionally not known as a wrestling hotbed, but certainly that's growing. What is like the high school wrestling scene in North Carolina, and are you guys actively involved in that?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is how many D1 programs and how many college programs are in the state. And now, the success that all these schools are having, it only elevates the game for high school kids. How can you not take notice? You have obviously what we're doing here, and you got UNC, you got App State, Duke, all those teams within the state that are doing a really good job. There's so many opportunities for these kids to wrestle and compete. But you also have all these resources where these guys can, whether it's the summertime, they're in a club, they're offering out their skill set, not just us as coaches, but our guys. You get access to Quiz, Mock, Tommy Gant, Hayden, Trent. That's just one school. Now you take another school and you got the same thing, and that trickles down, even for high school coaches, if any of them ever want, we always, not right now during COVID and a dead period, but we always open our room up for coaches to come by, watch, take notes and whatever they can do, which will carry over, make the state better. When the state's better, it gives us better opportunities for in-state recruiting, which is huge for depth. Need it.
And it's like the fact that you guys are doing so well without a perennial power hotbed state for high school is impressive, because all the scholarships, you're looking at out-of-state tuition for that. And so it's just that much harder. It's just incredible to me that you guys are able to do that. If you had to look at kind of your strategy over a year, are you someone that plans something out 12 months in advance, or how do you structure a season and a training for your guys?
Yeah, we'll meet usually at the end of the year, and we'll go over like a year business plan as a staff. We pretty much have an idea of what we're going to do regardless with our training. We have it down to this time. We're going to be, focused on A, B, or C. We're going to make sure we're in shape this time of the year. We're going to pull back a little bit, recover at this time of the year. So we do a lot of that. And I think you also have to know your team. Like this year, obviously it's a totally different, this is a wild card year, but going into it, we were going to be a little senior heavy. So we knew, some of the workouts we were doing didn't need to be as high intensity with, drawn out. Like our preseason's usually pretty rough and tough, but knowing that we had a lot of guys that were older going in their 5th year in college, a couple of them had, some surgeries. So we want to protect their bodies a little bit. So we got to be strategic in that. But for the most part, we have a blueprint that's laid out of what we need to do different times of the year, and not just wrestling, but like you talked about, your promotion, to make sure that people are coming to matches and maybe tweak 1 or 2 things or try to get a new idea so we can keep evolving.
And is it something where you're literally going out to the Rotary Club and shaking hands? I mean, how are you doing that to get people in the seats?
Yeah, you got to spread the word. I think that's big, being involved in different events and within the community. And luckily here in Raleigh, there's a lot of opportunities for people to know about wrestling. And I also think there's a lot of former college, not just NC State, but there are a lot of people who wrestled in college that are here living in Raleigh, whether it was, a program from this conference or that conference. But there are a lot of former college wrestlers that live here and that are doing pretty well. So we pull them in together. They have friends. Next thing you know, we sell out an arena against a dual meet against last year, actually a year ago at this time, when we sold it out against UNC.
Wow, sold out, and that's in the Coliseum.
Yeah, Reynolds seats a little under 5. It can seat more, but I think we had right around 5,000 people for that duel.
I got to imagine, a tight gym like that gets pretty loud, pretty ruckus.
It's an awesome atmosphere when it's packed in there. It gets wild and crazy, and it's eerie right now, wrestling in there and not having that. But it's like these matches are so intense, and there's like it's just quiet. You're like, this is kind of weird, but this is such great wrestling. You get some really good matches, and you're like, if there was a crowd here, you would not be able to hear anything.
Right. And is that something where you guys do that platform with like the nice display every duel, or just for the big ones?
We've done a stage a couple times for some bigger duels. So no, we usually we'll pick one or two.
Yeah.
And this year probably not with no fans. Obviously, we're not doing a whole lot other than just getting out there and scrapping.
Well, for folks who don't know, we don't have a relationship at all outside of this podcast. And what just jumped out to me researching this, and I've researched hundreds of these, is just the presentation for NC State is top notch, whether it's all the content online, all the highlight videos, the duels. It's just, it exudes professionalism. Whereas some teams, you go to their website and it's just, it just doesn't pop to you, so everything you guys are doing from a presentation standpoint is just unbelievable. And I love that.
I appreciate that. Yeah. We take pride in that. We have, obviously our staff works really hard, and then it trickles down to everyone that works within our program helping us. Brian Reiner does an amazing job with our SID, and the people that are connected. Everyone that's connected to wrestling that works with us day to day has a really good understanding of what we're trying to do and our expectations and our culture. And again, it's easy to work and want to do work for a team when your guys are very respectful and appreciative to the people, because they know, that those people have a direct impact on the output of content going on there. And, if one of the kids is not being nice to someone, it's like, why am I going to go above and beyond to help these guys and put that out there? And luckily we have, those guys that are extremely respectful, appreciative to everything people do for our program.
No, it shows. Well, I wanted to hit you with 3 what we call rapid fire questions, and then we'll let you go, Coach.
All right, let's see if we can answer them right.
Let's do it. Back in your day, you were in a room full of killers. You had DC. You had Pat Smith was probably wrestling up, Mark Munoz. Who was the guy that you got a tap on the shoulder and it was just an absolute war when you were in the Okie State room? The toughest go.
I wouldn't call it a war. I'd call it more of a beating. Mark Branch was, I was a true freshman and he was a senior, and it was just torture to wrestle with a guy like that was so good with legs. And he taught a lot. And then he stayed on to coach, which even made it worse, because he would sit there and we would be probably drilling for an hour and a half, and then he'd jump in and go live, and he'd just torture guys in that room. So I had him, and then you had a completely different style who in the off season I trained a lot with, JJ McGrew. Well, a lot of people probably didn't realize how good he was, but he was like the number 2 guy behind Melvin Douglas for a very long time. But you want to watch some fun wrestling, you get him, and then Munoz and all those guys that were still training. So,
God, just killers in there.
Good talent there.
Man.
Yeah, we could go on and on with that, because then you get into the guys you're talking about with Cormier and all them. They're just exciting wrestling all around. There was no easy days.
No. And kind of the next question just dovetails on to your college career. And this is totally random and you may not know. Your senior year, Nationals were at Albany, which to me is just so trippy because you grew up in that area.
Yep.
The guy at your weight, who was the 8th seed who won it, he pinned like 5 people. Was that just out of nowhere? Like, who the hell was that?
I think he got hot at the right time. Rob Roan.
Rob Roan, yeah.
Yeah. Lambert was beating him almost by a tech fall in the NCAA finals, and he hit him with a cement mixer. He was doing cement mixers. So he was almost be down in every match and then would hit these guys with cement mixers. So it's a great way to go out for him.
I was looking at the bracket. It's like fall. I'm like, what the hell? Like, unbelievable. Yeah. And then I checked his seed as the 8th seed or something like that. You rarely see that kind of thing.
No, he got hot at the right time.
And last one, Coach, you mentioned your philosophy a few times. I know we've hit on it, but If you had to just distill, your philosophy to a new recruit, like when they come in, how would you kind of verbalize that?
That's an interesting one. I would say the biggest thing to me is to listen. Like when we're talking to these recruits, that a lot of times the kids that I say listen and understand what we're about succeed here. The ones that think we're BSing struggle when they come to NC State and say, I didn't think you were serious when you said A, B, or C. And I keep saying that all the time. I was like, what can we do better on our end when we're communicating to a recruit of our expectations so there's no adversity when we're dealing with just expectations with lifestyle, work ethic, the whole 9 yards, and it makes it real easy for kids to fall in love with your program. Last thing you want to do is ever trick a kid into something that you're not about. And I think we do a really good job here just being upfront, brutally honest of what we're looking for. And that's why you see guys win right away when they come here, that buy in.
And is it something where kids aren't listening on to how time consuming classes, or is it just the level of work that
I just think the workload that we're looking for,
mm-hmm.
And the discipline outside the room, and that comes down to socializing and the sacrifices you got to be willing to make to be elite. Most kids struggle with that, and the ones that don't succeed right away here. So it's like we tell every kid, just set your priorities. Obviously you're going to have your family and school that have to stay out in front, and then it's got to be wrestling right there neck and neck with that, and everything else is going to come probably second to that until you're at least done with your college career, and then you can start picking back up on different priorities.
Well, and the great thing about your program is that you guys are in a tech hotbed. I'm in technology sales. Raleigh is booming. And so if there's any recruits listening who say, when I'm done, I want to stay where I'm going to school, you can't ask for a better spot than Raleigh, North Carolina.
No. And that's, you fast forward 20 years after college, people are moving to Raleigh because this is one of the best places in the country to live. And it's like, okay, what can we do on our end to let these guys know that you're going to want to get a good degree, you're going to wrestle at one of the best schools in the country, and long term, most people want to move here when they're done anyways, like whether it's they're retiring parent. A lot of the parents for these kids that are here are, as they get closer towards the end of their career, they want to retire and live down here. So it's like, let's make that happen right away so we can keep going.
I love it, man. Well, Coach, it's great to meet you. I hope to continue the dialogue, and best of luck with you guys.
Yeah. Same. Appreciate everything.
Take care. And all great things must come to an end. If you want to hear more from the podcast, text WRESTLE to 555-888. That's WRESTLE to 555-888. You can also find us on Instagram, Wrestling Changed My Life, Twitter, Ryan_N_Warner, as well as our website, WrestlingChangeMyLife.com. Take care, y'all.